A cocky boxing champ, Jake Iron Malone, challenges a stoic tomb guard at Arlington, igniting a heart-pounding showdown. One shattering punch sparks a clash of skill and honor. Will pride or discipline prevail? Stay tuned for the explosive truths. Before we dive into this story, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe that values like honor, courage, and sacrifice still matter, join us in keeping their legacy alive. The autumn sun hung low over Arlington National Cemetery, casting golden rays across rows of white headstones that stood like silent sentinels. The air was crisp, carrying the faint rustle of falling leaves and the distant hum of Washington, D.C. traffic. At the heart of this sacred ground, the tomb of the unknown soldier loomed with quiet majesty, its marble gleaming under the afternoon light. Tourists gathered respectfully, their cameras poised to capture the changing of the guard, a ritual of precision and honor that had gone unchanged for decades. Among them, one man stood out, his presence loud in a place defined by silence. Jake Malone, better known as Jake Iron, Malone strutted through the crowd with the swagger of a man who owned every room he entered. At 32, he was a heavyweight boxing champion with a record that made headlines, 28 wins, 25 by knockout. His custom tracksuit emblazoned with his logo hugged his chiseled frame, and a gold chain glinted at his neck. Trailing him was Tina Lopez, his social media manager, her phone already recording as she hyped him up for their YouTube channel. A few buddies from his gym followed close behind, their matching jackets marking them as part of Jake's inner circle. The crowd parted instinctively, sensing the energy of a celebrity in their midst. "All right, Tina, make sure you get my good side," Jake said, flashing a grin that had charmed millions of fans. "We're gonna give these folks a show they won't forget." Tina, 28, with sharp eyes and a knack for viral content, adjusted her phone's angle. "You're always camera ready, Jake. What's the plan today? Something big for the fans?" Jake's eyes locked onto the tomb of the unknown soldier, where a sentinel had just completed his shift. The guard, Corporal Daniel Reyes, moved with the precision of a machine. 21 steps, a crisp turn, 21 seconds of stillness. His dark sunglasses hid his eyes, and his immaculate uniform spoke of discipline forged in fire. Jake watched, his grin fading into something closer to a smirk. "Check this guy out," Jake said, loud enough for nearby tourists to turn. "All that marching, standing there like a statue, looks cool, sure, but what's it good for? In my world, you stand still, you're begging to get knocked out." A few tourists chuckled nervously, but others frowned, sensing the disrespect. An older woman with a veteran's pin on her coat shook her head. A family from Ohio pulled their kids closer, murmuring about keeping the peace. Jake didn't notice. He was in his element, feeding off the attention. Tina egged him on. "Come on, Jake. Tell them how it's done in the ring. Show these folks what a real fighter looks like." Jake flexed his shoulders, the muscles rippling under his tracksuit. "You see, in boxing, it's all about movement, power, precision. I've dropped guys twice this dude's size with one punch. World champs, tough guys, you name it. This guy." He gestured toward Daniel, who had just stepped off the mat, his shift over. "He's trained to look pretty, not to fight." Among the crowd, Colonel Sarah Mitchell, a retired Marine with 30 years of service, paused her walk. Her silver hair was tucked under a cap, and her eyes, sharp as ever, narrowed as she sized up Jake. She recognized the type, cocky, talented, but blind to the world beyond his own hype. She edged closer, her instincts telling her this was about to go south. Jake stepped toward Daniel, who now stood near the edge of the plaza, still in his ceremonial uniform. The sunglasses gave him an air of mystery, but his posture was rigid, professional, unyielding. Jake circled him like a predator, sizing up prey, his voice carrying over the crowd. "Look at this guy," Jake said, playing to his audience, "all stiff and proper. Bet he's never thrown a punch in his life. In the ring, I'd have him down in 10 seconds flat. 10 seconds, folks." Tina laughed, her phone still rolling. "10 seconds? You're being generous, Jake. 5 tops." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some tourists, drawn by the spectacle, moved closer, while others backed away, sensing trouble. A father in a patriot cap muttered to his wife, "This guy's asking for it." Colonel Mitchell's jaw tightened, but she held back, watching Daniel's reaction, or lack of. Daniel stood motionless, his face unreadable behind the sunglasses. Years of training had taught him to ignore provocations, to focus only on his duty. But Jake wasn't done. He stepped closer, invading Daniel's space, and raised his fists in a mock boxing stance. "Come on, soldier boy, show me what you got, or is standing still all they teach you in the army?" The crowd went quiet, the tension thick enough to choke on. A young woman with a stroller whispered to her friend, "This is so disrespectful. That guard's protecting something sacred." Her friend nodded, pulling out her phone to record, just in case. Jake, oblivious to the growing unease, started shadowboxing, his fists cutting through the air with the speed and precision that made him a champion. "See this? This is what a real fighter looks like. Fast, strong, always ready. Not like this guy, frozen like a mannequin." Colonel Mitchell had seen enough. She pushed through the crowd, her voice calm but firm. "Son, you're out of line. That man's not just a guard, he's a soldier, and you're standing on hallowed ground." Jake turned, his smirk fading slightly but not disappearing. "Hallowed ground, huh, lady? I respect the troops as much as anyone, but this guy's just a prop. All ceremony, no substance." Mitchell's eyes flashed, but before she could respond, Jake made his move. He stepped right up to Daniel, close enough to see his own reflection in the guard's sunglasses. "All right, soldier boy, let's make this interesting. I'm gonna show these folks why boxing beats standing around any day." Tina, sensing a viral moment, zoomed in with her phone. "This is going to blow up, Jake. Do it." Without warning, Jake threw a vicious right hook, his fist connecting with Daniel's face. The crack of impact echoed across the plaza, and Daniel's sunglasses shattered, the pieces scattering across the stone. A thin trickle of blood appeared on his cheek, stark against his pale skin. The crowd gasped, some stepping back, others frozen in shock. Tina's hands shook, her phone still recording, but her excitement replaced by dread. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Jake stepped back, his fists still raised, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. "And that's how it's done," he shouted, turning to the crowd for approval. But the approval never came. The tourists stared, horrified, as Daniel stood his ground, unmoved. Daniel's head had snapped to the side from the force of the punch, but he didn't fall. He didn't even stagger. His body absorbed the blow with a resilience that spoke of battles far worse than a boxing ring. Slowly, he turned to face Jake, his eyes now visible, cold, focused, and utterly unafraid. The blood on his cheek glistened, but his expression was pure steel. Jake's grin faltered. "What the? You're supposed to go down, man." Daniel didn't speak. Instead, he moved. His body shifted with the precision of a predator, closing the distance between Jake and Daniel in a heartbeat. Before Jake could react, Daniel unleashed a textbook combat strike, a sharp, controlled jab aimed at Jake's chest. It wasn't flashy, but it carried the force of someone who trained to end fights, not win points. Jake's reflexes kicked in. He dodged to the left, years of ring experience saving him from the blow. "All right, soldier, you want to play?" he growled, regaining his composure. He countered with a lightning-fast left jab, aiming for Daniel's jaw. The crowd held their breath, expecting another hit to land. But Daniel was ready. He sidestepped the punch with a fluid motion, his body low and balanced, as if he'd anticipated every move. In one seamless motion, he executed a technique reserved for elite soldiers, a swift grapple that targeted Jake's arm. With a twist and a push, he sent Jake crashing to the ground, his knee pinning the boxer's chest with just enough pressure to keep him down. Jake gasped, the air knocked out of him. His arms flailed, trying to break free, but Daniel's grip was unyielding, precise, and professional. The crowd stood in a stunned silence, the only sound the faint rustle of leaves and Jake's labored breathing. "Stay down," Daniel said, his voice low and commanding, the first words he'd spoken. This ends now. Jake struggled for a moment, his pride fighting against the reality of his situation, but Daniel's grip was unyielding, his training far beyond anything Jake had faced in the ring. Finally, Jake went still, his eyes wide with a mix of shock and dawning respect. Colonel Mitchell stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "All right, that's enough. Let him up, Corporal." Daniel released Jake and stood, resuming his parade ground posture as if nothing had happened. The blood on his cheek was still fresh, but his face remained impassive. Jake scrambled to his feet, his tracksuit rumpled, his confidence shattered. "What the hell was that?" Jake muttered, rubbing his chest where Daniel's knee had pressed. "You're no ordinary guard, are you?" Colonel Mitchell's lips twitched into a faint smile. "No, he's not. Corporal Dan."